Greetings, Dr. Kaba. Can you hear me? How's my audio going?
Audio is fine.
Am I able to? Okay, great. I'm sorry about you couldn't get in through your desktop. I know sometimes the phone is not a good way to podcast, but I don't know what's going on with the StreamYard. I wouldn't let you get in.
Well, I think I learned that when you send it to me in an email, like it's a letter to me, an email to me, and you put it in, it doesn't go through. But when you send it to me separate, just the link itself, it works. Because it was the same.
Okay, so I'll note of that.
Yeah, because I'm gonna keep that in mind in the future also.
Okay, thanks for letting me know that. So how I sent it. Yes, that's Brother Wasar from St. Lucia.
Hey, St. Lucia.
Yeah.
Bless you. All right, brother. It's good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too, Baba. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
It is my pleasure, my honor, brother, to be speaking to my family there on the island of St. Lucia.
Yeah, St. Lucia, that's next to Barbados, in between St. Vincent and Martin.
Fantastic to be reaching out to the family like this. St. Lucia. Okay.
Yes, I told him that you were going to be on, and he was more excited.
Yes, Baba, we know your work. We know your great work in St. Lucia.
Very excited to know that you're going to be.
Yeah, we know you.
We got to schedule a date for you to go there.
Oh, wow. I look forward to that.
How does that sound?
That sounds good to me. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, well, your reputation precedes.
Wow, I'm glad to hear.
That's how it is when you're doing the work. Not everyone will hear you, but those that hear you are your reflection. So those are people of quality the same way,
It is very true, my brother. It is very true.
That's true. Yeah, so Real Radio Talk, we got Kaba Hiawatha here in the studio. Also on the levels of life, well, I like to call him Baba-Kaba because it just rhymes so good for him. The Black Panther, the Luminous Warrior. And he's going to talk about his books, and we're going to get into a nice discussion, spirituality before religion. This is the time for that now, a nice dialogue, the type of thing, just a straight talk about it, Do have some people that's trying to wake up and look at things from a conscious point of view.
Yes.
And they just need a little guidance, a lead way of, direction they should go, what approach they should take in order for them to, open up their consciousness a little bit more and free themselves from that slave mentality, because it's definitely a slave mentality. As harsh as it may sound, but it's definitely on the realm of the slave master process thing,
Mm-hmm.
And you got all help them. So with no further ado, and let you take the floor like the Black Panthers did.
Well, my sister, first, may I thank you for inviting me onto your platform, to your audience, to speak to them. And to Brother Wasir, I'm just so happy to be able to reach out to my family in St. Lucia and to all those who are listening around the world. The key for me is what I always tell people is that I'm not a writer. The reason why I wrote those books was because I had something I felt that was important to say. And the number 7 is a very special number to me. I embrace the number 7 as a number for me. And in 2014...
That's my birth number.
Number 7. So mine too. I'm 16. I was born on the 16th. And 7 has repeated itself throughout my life.
I'm 7774.
Say that again.
Mm-hmm.
October 7,
I said I'm
74.
7774.
Oh, okay. 7774.
No,
Okay.
July
Well,
774.
July 7th. Okay. Well, happy Earth Day to you, my sister, that just passed.
Yes.
The
Give
key for me
thanks.
was between
Yeah, the triple.
2014 and 2023. I called it the decade of the seven. 2, 1, and 4, 2, 2, and 3. And so now we are coming into this last year. And I had always felt that many very important things were going to happen during this 10-year period from 2014 to 2023. And I decided that I wanted to write books to
Okay.
open up the way. Like I say, I'm not a writer. And when I say that, I mean, I consider myself a teacher. That's my lane, is to educate and to teach, particularly our children. But I felt there was a message that had to get out to prepare us for what was happening. And what's so interesting is what is happening. And as you say, it's important that our people have it in them to want to open up. But because of the conditions we've lived under for the past 400 plus years, Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, the great Senegalese scholar, says that when someone wishes to oppress another person, they will take their history, their language, and their psychological factor. And the psychological factor could be said to be your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. And after they take your history, your language, your values, interests, and principles, they superimpose their history, their language, their values, interests, and principles on you. So when all is said and done, no matter what decision the person who is being oppressed comes to, it would never be in their favor because they're not looking at the world through their own eyes. And one of the things that I've noticed as it relates to when people have oppressed us, I'm in the process of developing a documentary. My team and I went to Hawaii in June, and we did research, and we did filming on the Hawaiian island. We went to the cities of Hilo and Kona. We traveled through the island of Hawaii. Of course, Hawaii has many islands, but the main island is the one that we went to. And on this island,
Yes, I saw that. That was beautiful.
yeah, they did the same thing to them that they did to us. And the first way they come into you is through spirituality. They send their missionaries. And Dr. John Henry Clark, whom I consider to be my teacher, tells us that when someone can get you to turn away from your concept of your creator, and they can give you, and you accept their creator, you're already enslaved. And basically, family, that's what happened to us.
Basically.
So I wrote the book, Spirituality Before Religions, to analyze the way in which we saw spirituality. That was the purpose behind the book. To open the way for our people to understand, no disrespect to any religion. In fact, I didn't mention any religion. I didn't mention Christianity. I didn't mention Hebrew or Judaism. I didn't mention Islam. I didn't mention Buddhism or Confucius or Zoroastri. I didn't mention Rosicrucian. That wasn't the point. I took our people through a journey of understanding the origins of how we got to where we are. And that was the purpose. And spirituality before religions became a prerequisite or a introduction to the other book, the third book I wanted to write, which was Shabaka Stone, which when you analyze is the Old Testament and the New Testament brought together, that took the Assyrian drama from Africa and broke it up into two parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Shabaka Stone, written thousands of years ago,
Okay.
is where all religions came from. And I just wanted to talk about that. So with that introduction, my sister, I'd like to just stop for a moment and entertain anything that you might want to say, or if Brother Usia would like to speak, I just want to step back for a moment. Because we have to have a dialogue, family. We have to have a dialogue.
That's right.
So let's get some real talk going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, Baba.
Exactly.
Yes. My camp is the Rastafari camp. As a young man growing up in the islands, basically all we had was Christianity. Islam, not that strong in the Caribbean, especially on my island. But Christianity, Catholicism, very strong. So it starts with us seeking for our history, seeking for answers beyond slavery and our seasonal celebration of the quadrille and those slavery days. So seeking for our great African history brought us to Africa. And of course, we were still indoctrinated with the Abrahamic narrative. And so right now, what is going on within Rastafari camp is a shedding of Christianity and the dogma with it, and it's apparently it's inclusivity of Europeans within the camp. Because basically what happens when the Europeans come in the camp, they are the more affluent ones. They are more economically sound. So in the end, they end up taking over eventually. So these things we are seeing happening in Rastafari we saw recently. When it came to the awards for reggae music, it went to a band, a European band. So slowly we're seeing, because of religion, that we have a lot of infiltration in what is supposed to be African-rooted movements for an African revolution and a reclamation of our heritage. And also we have different views that keep us away from uniting, like indigenous views, which are not really supposed to, but when it comes to looking towards Africa, sometimes we find ourselves in conflict with our ideas and our ideals. So that's just what I wanted to put on the table. So now we can discuss.
My sister, did you want to respond? Or would you like me to respond?
No, I'm not saying anything. I was listening.
Because in 1975, I was introduced to Natty Dread by Bob Marley. I had heard of him, never saw him. But this brother raised up the album cover, said, "You ever heard about this brother before?" And, the album cover, Natty Dread. And as I got into the album and I began to listen, Positive Vibration, No Woman No Cry, Dem Belly Full, But We Hungry, I began to listen and I began to study not just Bob Marley, but the Rasta movement itself, how the origins of it, where it came from, the role that Marcus Garvey played in it, the role that His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie, played in it. Its development over the years, coming up out of the Garvey movement. and the concepts that were there. And I began to listen and to understand what was going on. And I saw Rasta the way that I saw the Moorish Science Temple. I saw it the way I see the Nation of Islam under the leadership of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I saw it under the banner of an African philosophy. And what, as an African people, we get into is we understand one love. You know, that's a cosmic word, one love. Like universe. You know, universe is one word. Bob Marley, last song on his last album, he say, all I've ever had is my redemption song. One word, one verse. And when we get deep inside of the philosophy of African spiritual system, we understand that they're all related. There's only one word. There's one love. You know, there's one concept that we all belong to. There's one creator of all. And we all belong to that one creator. And I have found Rasta as a philosophy is very close to the original African philosophy that I expressed in spirituality before religion. And once we as a people come to understand this, we no longer are afraid or ashamed or apologetic for being African. But when somebody takes your history, your language, your values, interests, and principles, they can make you reject the very thing that makes you who you are. And so I always felt that we're on the move. And quite frankly, those individuals that don't want to roll with us, it's okay. You will eventually want to.
Right. Uh-huh.
We see. And so we must begin this process.
Mm-hmm. But it seems like over the years, it's like Rastafari has moved away from the African side of Rastafari, and they're starting to go into a more Christian. It's like they're reading, they're more biblical than the average Christians that we grew up with seeing going to church every Sunday.
Well,
you understand that liberation and that warrior spirit watering down.
Well, you know, as brother had said, you know, rap music, okay? We have people outside of our culture who are now getting to be like the king of rap. Okay, rap came out of the streets of the African American community. Reggae music came out of the streets of Trenchtown 12. You know, it came out of revolution. It came out of a fight. You cannot take over something that is not of your philosophical. You can't do it. You can try. You can try to do it. But when you start to, it's like when people talk about the conscious community and they are disappointed in the way so-called conscious people act, I tell people, well, they're not conscious. Consciousness is a way of life. It's not a club you belong to.
Thank you.
Rasta is not a club. Rasta is not just music. Rasta is a way of life. And once we get to understand that, and we bring it back to our grounding as a people, we'll change the structure. Now, they may win awards, okay, but that don't make them rap artists. Rap artists came out of the Black Panther Party.
Exactly.
rap came out of Gil Scott-Heron, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni. It came out of street people. Rasta, same thing. And to evoke that Rasta concept, Peter Tosh, U. Roy came forward. Third World, Bob Marley. And I have enormous respect for Bob Marley. But he's not the only rap artist out here. And sometimes the European community, see, in the United States, reggae music became famous because of Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton took a song that Bob Marley did, I Shot the Sheriff. And he brought it to the American.
Yeah, community. I remember that.
Okay. And that's what brought the United States attention to reggae music. But reggae music came up out of the streets of Trenchtown in Jamaica. You know, the same way, you know, when you look at Mighty Sparrow from Trinidad. We have allowed people to co-opt our thing because of money. But they will never be us. No matter how you co-opt it, you will never be the king of rap. You would have to, it is equivalent to somebody attempting to be the king of the Irish people. And they're African. Just because you know Irish history, don't make you an Irish man or woman.
Yeah.
Rasta come out of the street of revolution of black people. It came out of a continuation of Garvey. And people take it and now they're trying to co-opt it into something that it's not. Same way people are co-opting rap music. Rap music was not gangster rap. It was not sex rap. It was not disrespectful towards women. That's not the origins of rap. It might be tainted now.
Exactly.
But that's not the origins. So no matter what they may say or do, that is not. And we just got to stand strong on it. And tell people, no, you're not the king of rap. I think you're doing, you know, there are things about other cultures in rap music that I like, but it ain't rap. The original rap, it's just not. Whether people like what I say or not, it's not. Rap music, hip hop is black.
Yes.
Period. Rasta and reggae is black. Period. Other people may do it. That's okay. Country music was black. Black folks started country music.
Yes. Rock and roll too.
Rock and
Remember
roll.
Rosetta Tharpe?
That's exactly what it is. It came up out of that. And rock and roll is a black term. It meant to have when a man and woman has a physical relationship. To have sex. That's what rock and roll means.
That's what I was just thinking. Exactly. When in the clubs dancing and rubbing up with each other. That was the rock and roll. Come on, baby, let's rock and roll.
Yeah, that's where it came from.
Yeah.
Dancehall music, although it is an extension of that,
yeah,
is the same concept. This is our thing.
Yeah, I know.
And we are allowing other people to co-opt our thing. So we just got to be very straightforward with what we're saying and allow people to understand what we're dealing with. It's our thing. You may do it, but it don't mean that that's you. The origins of it comes from the black community.
Exactly.
And the black experience. And if you haven't had that experience as a black person in the Caribbean or in the United States, Central South America, you can sing the music, but you can't be the person. Because it's a way of thinking. It's a way of life. It's in our DNA.
Mm-hmm. And the DNA is real. People don't think that the DNA holds memory, and it holds memory from 18 generations behind.
Absolutely.
And I think that that same DNA, since you said DNA, I'm just going to, move it over to a different conversation in a sense, not really a different conversations, but the DNA situation. I think that that has a lot to do with a lot of the conditioning of our people's mind, because their DNA, that type of DNA that they have in them, that's from the great 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 grandparents, and it's been passed down to them. So they're just reacting what their ancestors was doing, like with religion, for instance. Black people seems like I hear people say, "Be careful when you talk about the Bible or if you talk against it, because they have gotten death threats." So that DNA thing is really deep, that a person would want to kill you because you're trying to shed some light on some falsehood that they've been following for generations and generations before, and don't realize that they're getting this from their great great grandparents who were forced into slavery, religion forced on them. They had their grandparents had their parents, you are, with that same mentality, with that same about that. Because some people think that they could still love the Bible and still be on a higher consciousness at the same time. Or no, I'll put it like this. Some people feel like that's not having the Willie Lynch syndrome, because they use the Bible for certain things, not for to be a Christian or whatever it is. It's kind of hard to explain it, because when it's being said to me, it doesn't make sense. I'm trying to repeat it back so maybe it can make sense to you and you can make it make sense. But I feel like the DNA is sick. The DNA is sick, and there's no way around that.
The DNA is set within us going back generations. Do you know there's a Instagram page, Ancestral Footprints, that looks at this through mathematics?
Yeah, I think.
And it's what I've called the formula in math is the exponential expansion equation. Exponential expansion equation. And what that says is that we have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great grandparents, 16 great great grandparents, okay? Every generation. And if a generation is 25 years, and if I took you back 20 generations, which basically is 500 years, if I took you back to the date 1522, 500 years from 2022, I took you back 500 years. For each and every one of us to exist, when we think of how many ancestors we have that brought us into this place where we are now, it took 1,048,576 human beings to exist, to bring us into existence. Think of that number. When we think of how many ancestors we have, the DNA that we carry within us, we carry the DNA of 1,048,576 human beings within us, each and every one of us.
That's a lot.
Think of that number. Because I was talking to Brother James Smalls. We did a program the other day. And Brother James said, after I told the number, he said, when you think about ancestors, when you put the math to it, that number is quite something else. 48,576 human beings. Think about that. But family, I only took you back 500 years. How many ancestors do you have if I took you back 5 million years? Think about that. And I'm only taking you back 5 million. What happened if I took you back 25
5 million, right?
Yeah. 500 years gives us 1,048,576 human beings. By mathematical, that's math. That's something can't be argued. That's math. 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, and on down the line. If I took you back 20 generations, and there's a mathematical formula that you can use. Somewhere along the line, our ancestors were hurt very badly. They were captured, stolen, enslaved. They had their history taken from them. They didn't know where they came from. They had their language taken away from them. They didn't know how to express their deepest African thoughts. Their values, interests, and principles were taken from them. In other words, those things that value African people, those things that interest African people, those principles that African people live by was taken from them. And then we were forced to live a European history, speak a European language, and honor the values, interests, and principles of European people. How could we come to a proper mindset under those conditions? And that's what we're in right now.
Exactly.
And what my book, Spirituality Before Religion, attempted to do, the subtitle is Spirituality is Unseen Science, and Science is Seen Spirituality. You can't separate the science from the spirituality. They say, give to Caesar what is Caesar, and to give to God to what is God's. But to the African mind, the value, interest, and principle, Caesar is God, God is Caesar, and each and every one of us is Caesar, God having a human experience. We are the creator having a human experience. Every holy book says it. If I go into the bathroom, I see my image. And if the holy books say that God created us in his image, well, she also created us. How could a man look in the mirror and the image be a woman? So God is a woman too. I can't deal with a religion that says that God is only a man. For every God, you have to have a goddess.
Right.
It's just the way it is. That's science. Look at us. Each and every one of us is a product of our daddy and our mommy. One is not better than the other. Both of them have their purpose. Daddy's spermatozoa fertilizes mother's egg. Without the seed, you have no fertilization. Science. And this is what our ancestors
exactly.
Nature.
Because I believe that some of our condition is because of the 500-year transatlantic slave trade syndrome. People don't think that has a scale of a reason. They think that's some of the reason. I don't think it's some of the reason. I think it's about 95% of the reason why the mindset and the psyche is the way it is, especially when it comes to religion, when it comes to breaking away from the Willie Lynch. Because in the conscious ones I'm saying nowadays, they're not really operating like we would assume a conscious person is supposed to behave. And that's just from my observation over the years.
And if they don't act conscious, They're not conscious. Consciousness is a way of living. It's not a club or a community that you belong to. And if you are not respecting yourself, and if you're not respecting nature, you're not conscious. And when we realize that,
Right.
it takes it to another level.
Mm-hmm. And then this year's trauma that we're under is like my generation, your generation is a product of it.
That is it.
So,
We
Baba,
are,
would you
You
go
agree?
ahead? Go
Mm-hmm.
ahead, Baba.
no, man, I follow you, brother. So,
Okay. Yeah, I was saying as a teacher, because I teach myself, and there is a dichotomy we come into when we teach spirituality, and then we go into our African history, and the two, they don't seem to mesh when speaking of Christianity,
Right.
because Christianity, like the Abrahamic religions, they practice what we call religious intolerance, and that seems to be a fundamental part of the Abrahamic religions. Whereas in the African system, we have Ubuntu, and we have different frameworks in society that would allow people to express their spirituality, you know, and different, so many different gods, or what do you say, Neteru or Orisha, so many different deities in Africa that the Africans never argued over who is God or not. So we find that when it's time to teach, like everyone can hold their own individual stance or relationship with the divine. But when it comes to teaching and laying down the facts and the science, that there is a dichotomy in the system. For instance, when we go to school and they have religious knowledge. Religious knowledge would tell you that the world is about 7,000 years old, Adam and Eve. And then the following class would be biology. And they would tell you there is the science of dendrochronology. You cut the tree, you get to count the rings, and you get 15 billion years of the earth. And so when it comes to teaching, I want to hear your insights on, is it possible to hold a Christian idea of, well, cosmological idea, and try to use that to teach historicity?
you would have to get rid of the contamination that the European has put to religion. I do not have a problem with any scripture, be it the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Quran, the Rig Veda. I have a problem with the interpretations. Our ancestors, our African ancestors, spoke in metaphor. They spoke in symbol. They spoke in figurative language. Even Christianity preaches evolution. They have this thing about creationism or evolutionism.
The Adam and Eve.
Yes, the Adam and Eve concept, but even in the development of their story, it took 7 days. The fact that it took 7 days is evolution.
True.
If God was God and he could snap his fingers, he could have just done it in one moment. He could have created the heavens and the earth, the animals, the people. He could have done it like that. Why did it take 7 days, and why did he have to rest on the seventh day? African people think in metaphor. When I analyzed in my book, when I analyzed the Memphite theology and the pyramid text, the coffin text, the coming forth today by night, the Aten text, Shabaka Stone, what I did was I took the contaminated perspective of the Indo-European and I Africanized. I demonstrated the metaphor. I demonstrated how they took our story and they twisted it all around. And so when African people heard the story come back at them, they didn't have a problem with Christianity because they knew that story. You go to Ethiopia, you can see the very first formalized concepts of Christianity in Ethiopia, what we call Ethiopia today. Because my thing is, we have to move away from just looking at that geographical location we call Ethiopia. And we have to include the countries of Eritrea, Somalia,
exactly,
Djibouti, the northern part of Kenya, Chad, the southern part of Kemet, and we have to look at Sudan. That's all part of the kingdom I call Kush. And when we can then go outside of that, there's a chapter dedicated to that concept of demonstrating. So when Rasta talk about Ethiopia, I'm with that. But the Ethiopia I'm talking about is the land of the burnt faces, which is much larger than just that geographic location we today call Ethiopia, that came into existence in 1885 with the Berlin Conference, when Europe carved up Africa. Because before that, we were not carved up like that. There were not 54 countries as it is today. And so when you look at Christianity and the stories that they say in Christianity, I can see that on the walls of ancient Egypt, Kemet. I can see it. Our ancestors wrote those stories. Adam and Eve. I can show you carvings where Kanu, who is the ram head, is creating, but he didn't create man and woman. The original creation was body and spirit, the Ka and the Jet. Europeans got into it. They started talking a story about God put man asleep. I just want to know what anesthesia they gave the man to put him to sleep. And they say God took the man's rib. Now, did God have a hand that he went in and took the rib? I mean, how did he perform the operation? It's a metaphor, but it wasn't man and woman created. It was spirit and body. And when you study the form of the human family, you can see how that happened over a period of time. It's a beautiful story. That's one of my great disappointments. You know, when I wrote Spirituality Before Religions and I was doing the research for it, I came to realize what a beautiful story this is. But it's been so contaminated. It's become toxic. It's become a hustle for pimpastas to take advantage of the people. I see it so clear. It's a wonderful story.
And then the people, exactly. And then the people don't want to go to the source. They just want this Judaic version. They don't want to go to the source because then they have to go into who they are and where they come from and go there. They're running from their African self.
It's called epigenetics.
Is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. It's called epigenetics. 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 Epigenetics is the intergenerational, transgenerational life that we hand down to our children.
I was,
For so many of us,
I was
as
just talking about that the other day.
epigenetics, how did you talk about it, my sister?
Mm-hmm.
How did you talk about it? What was the conversation about?
Well, I was talking about it, and it was about the 500 years of slavery, and through epigenetics, that is the reason why a lot of people are so religious bound and so Christian headed and Bibled out, because it was passed to their parents and grandparents. It's a genetic thing. And I was explaining it from that.
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit, sis.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, you broke up for a little bit.
Okay. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yes.
How is it's better now? Okay, yeah, I was explaining it from that 500 years of slavery point of view.
Generational
That
trauma.
a lot of people are doing it. Yeah, a lot of people are doing it because their grandparents did it and their parents did it. They're not doing it because they did the research on it and you good about it. The first thing comes out their mind is, well, my grandmother did. That's what my mother did. So, because grandma did it, that is okay. So I was explaining it from a point of view as 500 years worth of slavery. This thing is more than just because I woke up today and now I'm going to church and I'm reading the Bible. This thing is genetically speaking to you. It's embedded in a lot of our DNA, especially if you don't want to come out of that. Especially if some people could bring you the truth all day and night and you're just, for some reason, glued to the Judaism. You know what I'm saying? For some reason, you're glued to European concepts of religion, no matter how much proof people show you, because now that belief system has become real to you. It's your reality now. And that's down to your grandparents or your parents, and you're doing things that it was literally like beat into us, forced on us. So after a while, it becomes a part of you. And that's where the genetics have the memories and the DNA remembers. But you can clean that up if you realize that that's what's happening to you and you want to, break away from that Willie Lynch-ism. But if you don't know that exists and you don't know that you have that sickness, then you'll keep on living this egregore, believing that what's real is not real and what's fake is real. Because in psychology they have a word, it's called egregore, in cognitive psychology, dealing with the brain and thinking, where your belief system have become so real to you that no matter how much proof a person brings to you, you're going to disregard everything they say.
How do you
because
spell
now
that,
the
my
mind
dear?
has taken over and the mind has the egregore.
Yes. How do you spell that?
It's EGR EGR EGORE.
EGREGORE. Yeah, that's a good word. I'm definitely going to research.
Yes.
I'm gonna research that word. When someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable, and that's what we've experienced.
And it's another word you can look up.
Yes.
Epitome. No, epitome. It's called epitome.
How you spell that?
Where somebody else's religion. Oh boy. EPINNY.
EPIN. Epitome.
That's also related.
Well, I'll find it.
Yeah. EPIN.
EPIN.
It's related to the egregore. Yeah. is related to the egregore word.
Epinani.
All dealing with the belief system. Yeah.
I'm writing this down because, just think of us as a people. And you see, one
It's
of the
like
things.
this.
Say again?
Yes. And I was saying, you see, it's like this. It's like with the egregore. No matter how much proof a person to tell you David didn't exist, Luke wasn't real, Peter didn't exist, Isaiah didn't exist, Isaac didn't exist. No matter what you tell them, no matter how much proof you show them, because of that epigenetics and the egregore, their belief system takes over truth. And that's where the myths start kicking in. And it also says that people have this egregore. It's mostly religious people that suffer from it. Because when you're young, you could say a child has an egregore. He believes Santa Claus is real, and then as he gets older, we know that Santa Claus is not real. But that's not so when it comes to religious people. Even when you tell them Peter and Paul is not real, they still believe it and will kill them too. And kill death trying to wake them up. Because the egregore is real in their reality. And that's where the mental illness start kicking in. The mind's a terrible thing to waste. So once you got the mind, that's it.
It's true. It's true. Very true. Just imagine when they stole us. See, there are stories about the enslavement process that are not really being discussed. When they went into these communities, they stole Africans and they brought them to parts of the Caribbean. And the children born who never knew their homeland were bred with this concept of inferiority and of a white God. And they grew with this understanding.
Yes.
And when you think of the story of Jesus the Christ, and you think of the way in which African people were living, you can understand why African people would lean towards embracing Jesus Christ. Because in so many ways, the stories reflected them.
Mm-hmm.
And they clung tenaciously to this story of Jesus Christ. And it allowed them to get through their day. In certain ways, I'm glad Christianity existed, because if our people on those plantations didn't have something to believe in, that there would be a better day, some of us, if not many of us, wouldn't be here today. However,
exactly. I know.
When a spiritual system no longer meets your needs and solves your problem, it's like carrying the boat on your back after you cross the river. The religion was very important to get us to where we are now. But once you get to understand the contamination of European Christianity or any of the other religions, even my brother Usir, the way in which they have corrupted reggae music, it's no longer that revolutionary music that came up out of the community. They soften it. They no longer create that revolutionary sound that gets people vibrating and moving on that African level. When they got into rap music, they began to soften it. It was no longer that revolutionary sound. And that's what they did with religion. They softened it. They contaminated it. to the point where they even have excerpts from the Bible that are built in order to enslave African people, that tell African people to obey your master like you should obey God.
I was reading. Sorry, Baba. I was reading to the letter from, I think it was Leopold II, to the missionaries going into the Congo, and he was explaining to them that don't go there teaching about God, because the African knows about God. They know you shouldn't steal. They know you shouldn't go into someone's wife. All these things they already know. But what you should teach them are the principles of servitude. And because they wanted to take them away from the minerals that were under their feet. So they had to give them another, how you say it, a place that is not earthly. Because what we find a lot in Christianity and these religions are kind of a depersonalization. Like you can't picture yourself in there because there's so much myth and unrealistic, things. So that's why I like what's his name, Aikuyama, his book 2000 Seasons, and he tells you about that trotting around the land, being chased and moving so much that sometimes they forgot where they came from, and those that knew where they were going had died, so they didn't know where they come from and didn't know where they were going. And he explains the psychological effect of not knowing who you are and where you come from and becoming a fragment of a whole. Like in the Caribbean, since we're more tourist oriented, like you said, a lot of the revolutionary music and things had to be toned down. And although we have the Caribbean legends like Stokely Carmichael, Maurice Bishop, Blyden, all the greats like Césaire, Franz Fanon. So we're surrounded by them, but we never hear anything about them. So it's like the greatest history of the Caribbean, fueled history in the USA, the Black Power movement, all this has disappeared. And all we learn about is Francis Drake, John Hawkins, Queen Elizabeth, Columbus, the pirates, Jean de Bois, So we grew up with a kind of, how they say, the endogenous epistemology, a foreign idea of knowing things. And this is what that keeps us in the Caribbean unable to unite. A lot of us say we're not African. And if you say you're African, they say, well, why don't you just go back Africa? So we still have this thriving in the Caribbean, this idea. But this is in line with success, class, politics, because Christianity, I think, is the fuel for capitalism. The individualization, each man for himself, and God for us all. But again, Sheikh Anta Diop told us about the European, how about the how you call them, the plebs, the servitude, and how their servitude was so much different from our servitude. and capitalism never took hold in Africa. So what we're trying in the Caribbean now is to re-Africanize the youth because it's very difficult with the elders. So we're trying to set up hubs, different little organizations where those that are like minds can come together. And because I think the teaching aspect is the most important. I know it was a lot, but I'm going to like to hear your feedback on that, Baba.
Please say the last thing that you said that broke off. What's the most important thing to teach?
Well, I said that education, edifying the youth, I think is the most important thing, very important. But we have a problem, and I think it's not just in the Caribbean, but we don't read. There's a big problem with reading. And I have a little organization, it's called the White Lotus Temple, and we're actually a research group. So we have a lot of books, and we haven't gotten yours as yet, Baba, but we have a lot of books by Tudika Kilimanjaro, Dr. Fukiao, Shikanta Diop, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Ivan Van Sedima, so we have a lot of literature.
Yes.
And we're trying to teach the youth this information. And we find them to be very receptive. They're very receptive. Unlike the elders who are caught up in the religiosity. But the youth are very receptive. So hopefully we'll have the elders, when we have a location, we can have the elders from the states coming through. Because I think we should work together, especially because of our demographics. We have like 85%, 86% African people. The rest are mixed, and then there's the Europeans, few Europeans and Indians. And the government is an African people, though their minds may be European, but still there is a more acceptance right now of African literature and learning more about Africa. Black Panther did a little bit. All these little things, they do a little bit to help people assert themselves and gain back that self-respect and that self-esteem to be an African again.
Yes. And like you say, brother, that is the cornerstone. Teach the children. I spent my life, that's my career, here in New York, specifically South Central Bronx, teaching the children. And like you say, they are very receptive to this information. They're open like a dry sponge that put in water and it just expands. I've experienced it. I've seen it. I have individuals that contact me now, my brother Usab, who were in my kindergarten class. They're in their late 40s now. And I see them sometimes and say to me, they remember what I told them about themselves and about culture. I've had students remind me of things that I said to them, that at the time I was just talking to them because, see, the bottom line, when all is said and done with the children that I've experienced, before you teach them, if you can love them, and if they can feel the love, they will open up to you and they will receive your information. They have to feel the love. And you have to be with that love.
Exactly.
And
And
what
that's
I
what I my life doing, even to this day. I've taught every grade, I've taught every subject, from pre-K straight through college. I've taught every grade, every subject. And even my college students looked upon me as their elder, as Baba, as even a father. Even to this day, I'm going to be returning back to the campus here where I taught college. I'm going to be returning back in October because there are students that never. I stopped teaching. I taught at a state university, New Paltz, for 12 years, and I taught from 2004 until 2016, and then I started to get into other things to build. There are students that are inviting me to come back to campus that were not my students. Because right now I have not been teaching there for, I mean, give or take, you're looking at approximately 6 years. So when you think of 4 years college, there are students that were not on campus when I was on campus, but they remember the stories that the other students told them about what I did. And they're inviting me back to share this time. I say this not as it reflects on me. I say this as a reflection on this information. But we got to get to the children. I'm on a crusade, and I'm telling young brothers and sisters today in high school and college, become a teacher. When I taught kindergarten, 5-year-old students, 4-year-olds, they used to say to me, "You look like my daddy. Can I call you daddy? I wish you were my daddy." And my response,
they so cute.
And my response was, "I am your daddy." Because in Africa, every adult male is Baba and every adult female is Mama. I may not have brought you in biologically. I may not be your biological father. But in the African tradition, I am your father. And as long as you're in my presence, I am responsible for your development.
That's right.
And with that love and with that respect for them, this is why students contact me even today. I was coming home the other day, and this brother approached me and said I was his teacher in 1979.
What? That's the day I was born, man. That's the my year.
Wow.
That's the year I was born.
All right. He said I was his teacher. He said he
I was
still
5 years old.
Okay. So that what I'm saying is supporting exactly what you're saying. This information works. Our children want to know who they are, where they came from. And when they are being disrupted by this European religiosity, they can never be who they were born to be. And that's why I wrote my books.
Exactly.
Was to break that epigenetic tag. Break it. And allow our children to embrace their Africanity. Boukman and Mambo Cecile, the night before in Alligator Pond, told the people of Haiti, cast aside your white God, embrace your African spirit, and you are free. Cast aside your white God. Because when someone can make your God not look like you and you worship them, how could you ever respect yourself and your community? Your God don't look like you. So when you look in the mirror, you ain't looking at your God. You're looking at someone else's God. So when you go out there and you see them,
That's the meaning.
Please?
That's the meaning of the enemy. That's the meaning of the impunity.
Okay.
what you just said, that's the example of it. Yes,
Okay.
that right there. That last sentence you said. When your
Okay.
God doesn't look like you, but you are looking to that God for salvation, Savior. Yes, that's the epitome.
That is it. And that's what we're in. And once we break that, Bookman and Mambo Cecile, once you break that, once your God don't look white, and once your God reflects you, and when you look in the mirror, you're looking at God. I go into, sometimes I go into Christian churches and I tell them that. I say, I don't believe in God. Boy, they
Yeah, I
get
know that
upset.
was a good day at church, huh?
And I say, I don't have
That was
faith
a
in
good
God.
day at church.
I tell them I know God. The African folk don't have, you can stop believing and you can lose your faith. But once you know, you know. I know God.
That's right.
I watched God brush his teeth this morning. I watched God wash his face this morning. And every sister, every woman looks at God when she looks in the mirror. And once we understand this and we respect this, everything will change immediately. When you look in the mirror, Dr. John Henrik Clarke, when I first met him, I was young, 12 and a half. When I first met him, he gave me a homework assignment. And he told me to go home and to look in the mirror and tell the person I was looking at. And I always give this as a homework assignment. So everybody that's on board here, this is the homework assignment I'm giving y'all. So look in the mirror and tell the person that you're looking at, I love you. But mean it. He said, because if you can't do that, there is nothing anyone else can do for you. You have to love your complexion, your pigmentation.
That's
you have
real.
to love
That
your
is
hair,
real.
the width of your nose, the shape of your lips. You have to love everything about you. And even if you think there are things that you could improve, I hear people say, I hate how I look. No, you should never hate how you look. You should love how you look, but you should tell yourself you deserve better. So whatever it is that you have to do to make yourself better. And when I say that, I mean as it relates to your own health and nutrition. You do it not because you hate how you look, but because you love yourself and you realize you deserve better. Teach the children. Solar power is the future wealth of the planet. Brother, you are in St. Lucia. You are where the sun shines all the time. Study solar power. Solar power is the future wealth of the planet. Teach the children solar power. Teach them how to build solar panels. Each of us is a solar panel. Melanated people are solar panels. We attract and capture the light, heat, and sound energy of the sun. And we are energized by that. There will be no air you can put at the end of your name. Whoever is able to master nuclear fusion, the bringing together of the nuclei of the atoms, whoever can master that, there ain't no word like millionaire, trillionaire, billionaire. I just found out that the next one is quadrillionaire. There will be no money concept that they can put on your name. You will be wealthy beyond thought. The sun has eternal power that it sends you. And that same eternal, you will never run out of energy from the sun. You will never run out of wealth when you are able to capture the sunlight. you'll be able to run everything for free. Everybody talking about 4G and 5G. I'm talking about Raji. Raji, solar power. Our ancestors understood it. That's why they built the pyramids. That's why Akhenaten wrote the Aten text. He knew the power of the sun. We are children of the sun. That is what Kushites called themselves. Children of the sun. Because they understood that they were starlings. The day we were born, our spirit died and was put in this thing called a body. When we die, our spirit is reborn. That's what resurrection means. When our mommy's egg was fertilized, the spirit that was throughout the universe was encapsulated and captured in that zygote. And through our lives, we lived to whatever age. But our spirit was captured in this sarcophagi. Because that's the other part of the story of the sarcophagus, is that it was a tomb where the body of the deceased was placed. It was captured. This is what our body is. It's a tomb. Temple, but tomb. And when we die, what they call die, our spirit is released and freed from being captured in this body.
Resurrected.
Resurrected. That's the story of the Asarian drama. The resurrection of the soul that was able to move forward. That's us. And it don't make it, you know, when I was young, I grew up Roman Catholic, like I say, and I would go to church with my mother. And this was like on a Saturday evening. There was no services going on. But my mother used to like to light candles and say a prayer. And I noticed that there was these little candles that cost 25 cents. You would put 25 cents in and you light the candle and you say a prayer. There was a bigger candle for $1, and then there was the big one for $5. And I used to ask my mother, if you lit the $5 candle, would you get your prayer answered quicker than when you lit the 25-cent candle? See, the psychology of the pimpasta. It's a pimpasta concept. The more money you give, the quicker your prayers will be answered by God. And here we were, you know, 25 cents to deal with. Yet there were people that had more money than us, and they could light the $5 candle. So, and then when I saw the people who light the $5 candle, normally they were European. Sometime I saw some black folk with the $1 candle. But my mother and I would always light 25-cent candle. And so in my mind, my psychology said, if Jesus was so poor, because they tell this story about Jesus being so poor, this brother used to walk the earth sometime with only one sandal. He couldn't afford a second sandal. So I'm saying to myself, if Jesus was so poor, and yet the cardinal has this ring, a ruby red ring, that they told me was worth thousands of dollars. I said, there's something wrong with this religion. There's something wrong with rich people who are worshiping poor people and enslaving the poor people. Because then I start looking at them like they're Romans. The same people that crucified Jesus are the same people that's in the church.
It sure is.
I had a problem with that as a child. And then
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend from Puerto Rico, and he and his family practiced Santeria. And I used to go to his home when they were having ritual. And oh my goodness, what I saw. Las siete potencias, the seven powers. I saw espiritismo, a mixture of the original indigenous faith system with the African Yoruba tradition. And the music and the food. You know, I watched them as they would sacrifice the chicken. And that chicken tastes so good because it was fresh. And then I came to realize that what they did in Santeria is what halal is. I came to realize that when you talk about kosher food, what you're dealing with is the special way in which an animal is killed so that toxins don't run through the animal's body. And that it took a special person to know how to kill the animal. See, I'm vegetarian now, so I don't deal with flesh. But back then, I was definitely into arroz con pollo. I was into chicken and rice. And so when I tell people about Africa, I met Dr. John Henry Clark when I was 12 and a half. But I went to these rituals with the Babalawo when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. And I tell people all the time, I was introduced to Africa not through history. I was introduced to Africa through spirituality. Because, man, I'd get up and bailar, I'd dance and sing, man, and I'd go to them drums. I'd never experienced anything like that in the Catholic Church. So my African spirit was born in me when I was very young. And so with all of these things, by the time I met Professor Clark, oh man, I was ready to chuck that Roman Catholicism away. I was ready to move on to another spiritual system. And, you know, because, see, they done beat this in us that we get real scared. You know, people call me heretic. They scared of me. People, you know, really scared of me because they have been so indoctrinated into religion. When people hear what I got to say, they get scared. Because when you talk like me, God gonna strike me down. I say, God can't strike me down. They say, why can't God strike you down? I say, because I am God. And I decided I ain't striking me down. In fact, I'm going to rise me up. And that scares people. That scares people when you talk like that. They are very afraid.
Yes, very.
How did your mother feel when you were going to those Babalo sessions and the sessions at your Puerto Rican friend's house? How did she feel about you being exposed to that?
She never knew. But she certainly enjoyed the fried chicken I brought back with me. But she didn't know. I never told her. And it wasn't that I was hiding it. I just was with my friend. To me, it was just something that I did. Years later, I would talk to her about it. But I was much older then.
And what was her response then?
Huh? Oh, she was.
What was her response then?
She said, now I know why you ain't in the church no more. You talking all this
She was upset?
No, she wasn't, because I always was, to her, the son that she always wanted. My parents were very proud of me and what I did. And my mother realized, because my mother, although she was a Catholic, she was the epitome of what a spiritual person would be. And she saw how I conducted myself, the respect I had for her, my father, my sister, people, the grades that I was getting in school, how I conducted myself, what people said about me. She said, well, whatever it was, it certainly formed you into a good person. And so,
Oh,
if
okay.
what you
Okay.
do,
Very understanding.
oh yeah, very
Mm-hmm.
understand. And my mother lived and she died Roman Catholic. My mother went to church every Sunday, every day of her life, even when she was sick with cancer, or what's called cancer. She went to church every Sunday. And I also ensured that her rising ceremonies, her funeral, was in the church of her choice. Because I believe in respecting people's wishes. I don't
Yes,
have a
that's true.
to put my belief system on somebody else. And so what everything my mother wanted to happen, because I took care of her funeral, everything my mother wanted to happen happened, even giving the altar boys money. I gave the money straight down the line. And I respected and obeyed her wishes like she obeyed and respected mine. And that's what true Christians do. Because caress comes from Africa. My mother just didn't know she was celebrating an African system.
Or maybe she did, but because she was comfortable in her zone, she respected you and your way of life, just like you said you respected her and her way of life. I'm sure she saw the similarities when you was
Yeah.
explaining to her what you was experiencing at your friend's house and with the Babalo. I'm sure she saw like, okay, well, we have saints in the Catholic Church. They're talking about the Orishas. You know what I mean? It may be a different way of celebrating, but it's still giving reverence to that one source, that one
Yeah.
omni-galactic source.
Yeah. We
And
belong
her
to
being
St.
on
Paul
that
the
house.
Apostle.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
church's name was St. Paul the Apostle. I told her about Santa Barbara. I told her about Oshun, Shango, and I showed her where that was in the Catholic Church. It's called syncretism.
Mhm.
And what
It's
did she
just like
say?
She was fascinated by it. She was fascinated with my explanation of it because I explained it to her just like I'm explaining it now. It made sense. She may not have gone along with it, but it made sense to her. And she said, if that's what gets you where you got to go, do your thing. And I said, if what you're doing in church gets you where you got to go, do your thing.
So
It
y'all
met
both
her
was
needs.
doing y'all thing.
That's the bottom line. And that's how I wrote my book, Spirituality Before Religions, with that type of respect for other religions. My problem is with the interpretation of the scripture, not the written scripture. White folk contaminate everything they touch. And I don't speak in absolutes, so I don't condemn everybody. But as a people, they contaminate everything. They contaminate reggae music. They contaminate rap music. They bring another dimension into something where it don't belong because they want to be involved in everything. And there are just places you don't belong.
well, I listen to this one, Baba. I was once reasoning with a European that, well, for me, a European cannot be a Rastafari. He can be or she can be a Rastafari sympathizer,
Mhm.
but you cannot be Rastafari. So he was telling me that I am not a Ras. So I told him, but explain to me how I'm not a Ras. So he said that I don't speak Amharic. I don't live in Ethiopia. He speaks Amharic. He lives in Ethiopia. He's married to an Ethiopian woman, and he's an Orthodox Christian. So I told him, well, I told him he was wrong, and it's because really the Christian races have left a door open to include you Europeans. But because of the dogma that we stick to regarding Christianity, y'all will use that same dogma against us, you know, because they have the money to go Ethiopia, you know, and with economic power, you have leisure time. You can afford to learn languages. You can afford, you have time. Most African people are surviving, you know. So what I realized is that once we as African people stick to the dogma of Christianity, the materialization of it, to deify someone without also accepting that you also are divine. That is a problem. And as long as Christianity, like in St. Lucia, when you mention African, not even African spirituality, when you mention African history, some people will call that demonic. So you're not even supposed to deal with the history, far less the spirituality. You know. But Rastafari right now is um, changing, evolving into putting our ideas, our philosophy, and making it more African centered, you know, more leaning to Bantu philosophy, which is actually Kemetic philosophy. Yeah. So this is where I'm one of those that's pushing Rastafari into that direction. But a lot of them are pushing back because they know to deify Haile Selassie through his title, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Conquering Lion of the Tribe of Judah. So they put that title of omnipotent and omniscience on him, you know, which actually diminishes the greatness that a man can, or the virtue that a man can strive for, if indeed he is omnipotent or omniscient. If he knew everything, he wouldn't have need for courage, you know. So instead of actually building him up with his humanity, you're actually destroying him, trying to make him the creature of the Bible. So Rastafari is at that evolution. You know, we're not yet in our maturity. You know, we're still in our evolution. You know.
Yes. Yes. And that's a great way to explain it, my brother Osar, because that's exactly what it is. It's a way of growing. For instance, I'll give you another example that I give, just as you have given that example. The Nation of Islam, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad spoke about Yaqub, and that Yaqub was a doctor that created the European people. Okay, I've always seen Yaqub as the Ice Age. I've seen Yaqub not as a human being, but as a process of geological dimension, metaphor, because it's the Ice Age that did create the depigmentation and the change of body form and hair texture and all of the other things that go in. So I saw Yaqub not as a human being. I saw Yaqub as a geological experience, which is called the Worm Ice Age. What the Honorable Elijah Muhammad realized was that he presented a process of becoming that in its maturity, we would learn the science of the Ice Age. But the idea of the European being created by something was a metaphor. And he used Yaqub because at the time, as a people, we could digest that. So when I look at Minister, I believe his name was McPherson, that went to the coronation of Rastafari Makonnen, who took the coronation name Haile Selassie. And he proclaimed that he remembered Marcus Garvey said that kings shall come out of Ethiopia and princes shall come from Egypt. I believe that's the way he said it. I could have it reversed, kings and princes. But the idea was that when he saw Haile Selassie come onto the throne of Ethiopia, it was like Marcus Garvey was, his proverb was being brought into existence, because Marcus Garvey had joined the ancestors in 1940. This coronation happened a little bit after that. So Garveyism was very strong in our people's minds, particularly from Jamaica. And so now that we're here, we now look at Haile Selassie with much respect, although there are many Ethiopians that have a problem with him. I understand all that dialogue, but they have a respect for him. And they made him a god. But the idea was that in maturing of Rasta, in the maturing aspect of it, you would come to realize that we as a people, through the imagery of Haile Selassie, are sitting on the throne to become royal once again. And this evolution, moving into the African centeredness of this story, will still pay respect to his imperial majesty, but will not necessarily make him a god, but will make all those that live like him the gods on earth. Now, this is where the 5%ers come in. There are so many connections that we can make as a people to bring us all together, to mesh as a people, be it the Moorish Science Temple, the Nation of Islam, Rastafarianism, bringing it all together to make one. That's what spirituality before religions was meant to do, is to take African philosophy. And just as we look at Ethiopia as a very important place, Ethiopia means burnt face, land of the burnt face. It's not a geographic location. Kush is the empire from whence all of these people came. And there's a chapter in my book that I go through the process of talking about who the Kushites were. In my book, Shabaka Stone, I take the Kushites back a step into the Twa and Mbuti people who are derogatorily called pygmy. They are the first family on the earth, the Twa people.
Yes. Yes.
I was doing a presentation on the children.
I always say that. That the Twa were the first people, and then the giants came.
And then the giants came.
That's how I see it. Then the giants came.
Have you heard of a brother, Obata? He wrote a book titled The Integration Gap. My sister, that's a book. That's a brother you might want to bring on your program. Oba, OBA, T''Shaka. He has a book that's titled The Integration Gap, the Integration Trap. He has a whole section on the Twa people.
You have the book yourself? You can show it on the screen real quick.
I'm trying to see if I can. Yes. Hold on one moment.
Okay. No problem. Everything good with Sarah and David? David not saying nothing.
Yeah, I'm enjoying.
David listening. David enjoying the listen.
Okay.
I've never seen that book. Oh yeah, I think I've seen that book before. Integration Gap, the Generation Gap.
Bring it up a little closer.
The Integration Trap, the Generation Gap. Wow.
Okay.
You see that front cover there?
Yes.
Yes.
That Medunetta, that is the symbol.
Mm-hmm.
That's the symbol of the Twa people. This comes from Dr. Theophilio Benga's work. Okay, Dr.
Okay. I see that.
Oh,
Very good book.
oh,
This is our
It
brother.
looks like a good read.
It's a phenomenal piece of work when it deals with the Twa people.
wow.
Oh, I think I saw him before. Yes, yes.
Yeah, Google him. Google him. He has a program. He has a podcast.
Okay, I'm going to find him.
Yeah, definitely bring him on your program, my sister. He is my elder. I have such a high regard and respect for Dr. Obitashaka. He has done the work throughout his life. He's
And I will tell him that you recommended him.
That's right. Tell him that Kaba Kamene said he got to be on your program.
Okay.
He is a phenomenal scholar. He's a good brother. He's an elder. He is someone that doesn't get the recognition for what he's done for us that he deserves. Phenomenal brother. Phenomenal.
Oh, well, I'm going to make sure. I'm going to make sure he gets that recognition on Real Radio Talk.
Oh yeah.
And anybody else like him of his caliber, you let me know.
Wade Nobles.
Yeah, Wade Nobles. Yeah.
Yeah, Wade Nobles.
Okay, you're gonna have to email me this list.
Oh yeah.
So you can say the names for the listener, but email me this list.
Yeah, these are the scholars that have been doing the work all these years that I have studied their work. And of course, James Smalls.
Okay. Yes, we got James Smalls here. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was just on his program yesterday on Happy Talk.
Oh, I think I saw that. Yes, I saw that, and you were going in on something about Tariq Nasheed, but you took the floor on that one.
Oh wow, yeah.
I don't know exactly what happened, but I heard you saying something about at least he did this and he did that. I don't know what the argument was about.
Well, what it was is that they were really kind of beating Tariq down, and I was telling them, Tariq does it the way he does it. Okay, he got flavor. I've got a documentary up now on my site where I am comparing the life of Tupac Amaru of the Incan Empire and why.
Yes, Tupac, I know it. I read about him. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and why Tupac Shakur was named after him. And I've got I call it a Tupac-umentary. There were people that felt that he should not be highlighted, and I was saying, look, Tupac did what Tupac did. Okay, I may not have done it the way he did it, but he did it. And considering the life that he lived and who he was and what he went through, we all have our story. And we can disagree without being disagreeable. And so I've always been the first thing that we have to do as a people, we have to stop fighting amongst ourselves. The program that we had the other day with Happy Films was the concept of foundational Black American and Pan-African. And my stand is, I am a foundational Black American, but I'm a Pan-African through and through. If you are African, you are my brother, you are my family. Wherever you may be from. You from St. Lucia? Well, sorry, you're my family. You're my brother. Okay? I am an African American. Mother is from Boston, Massachusetts. My father's from Tuskegee, Alabama. Okay? I'm a foundational Black American. But any place where there is an African, they are my family. So it's not about foundational Black American versus Pan-Africanism. It is foundational Black American and Pan-Africanism.
And exactly.
We are one family at home and abroad. Now, I realize there are people that say disrespectful things. But I'm not talking to them.
Right.
To my brother Osar, who we are together on this. Together, we're going to make it happen. I'm with our brothers and sisters around the world, from Puerto Rico and from Trinidad and and Africans from Holland and Suriname that speak Dutch, brothers and sisters from Haiti, Dominican Republic, Pan-African or perish. And so the point I was making was, of course, people know Tariq Nasheed and how he handles his business. And what I was saying is, I respect Tariq. I may not say and do the way he say and do, but we can disagree without being agreeable. Tariq's contributions to our community with Hidden Colors, with the conference that he had last year,
nothing compatible.
Okay, nobody could do
Not
what
on that
Tariq did. Nobody could do what Tariq did. So let's back up off each other and just accept each other and understand each other, honor and respect each other. I have known and worked with Tariq now for 12 years. I understand where he's coming from. I understand the strengths and the areas that need a little bit more strengthening. But I could say that about me.
Exactly.
I need places where I can strengthen. We all have history. And we need to stop judging each other. And number one, we have to stop fighting each other. Because that's what tears us down each time. When we start fighting each other. I ain't letting nobody come between me and my brothers and sisters, no matter in the United States or any other part of the world. I am black first. And I'm clear on that. Folk be looking at me, have a lot to say. I'm black first.
Yeah, and that can never change.
And that will never change, Brother Asar. Wherever I find my people, I'm home. When and if and I get to St. Lucia, I am home.
Of course.
When I went to Holland and I was with the black community, I was home. When I went to the UK and I was with the black community, I was home. When I was in Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, I'm home. Wherever Africans are, Africa is. And wherever Africa is, I am home. And once we get that mindset,
I like that.
it's stopping us.
I like that.
Ain't no stopping us. We must have unity with us. We have to stop fighting. That's the first thing that has destroyed us historically. We fight amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we allow people to take sides as we fight each other. Just like there are people who say, no, we can let Europeans in and they can be Rasta. And then there are brothers and sisters that say, no, to be Rasta, you must be African, as we know Africans today. And then what they do is they get in between us. And they have the brothers and sisters.
You sure do.
The African and the brothers
Exactly.
and sisters. You know, white people can be Rasta, and then we start fighting amongst each other. And I'm saying, I don't care if you let white people in. I don't care if you don't let white people in. If you black, I support you. And we got to move forward. I don't agree with you if you think that Rasta can be European. But I'm not going to fight you. I'll probably ignore you. And I'm going to work with the brothers and sisters that understand. To be Rasta, you must be of African descent. Okay, you must have Trenchtown 12.
In your DNA, right?
It's simple.
Right.
If you don't like what I'm saying, you don't need to listen to me. But this is where I'm coming from as a person. Bob Marley say the one good thing about music is when it hits, you don't feel no pain.
Oh,
that's true.
You know,
Baba, what do you think?
Vibration.
What do you think about initiatives taken by Rastafari to build corporations, organizations funded with European money. Would you call that big contradiction and a trap?
Well, I understand what they're doing, but here's my story. If you eat the king's meat, you're going to dance to his tune. If you eat the king's meat, you're going to dance to his tune.
If you drink his wine, you're going to get drunk.
If I came in contact, and you see a lot of times what they do is they let you build the organization and then they take it over. So they may give you everything you need to create a school for black children. But once you build it, they'll take it from you in your name. So you have a choice to make.
That's right.
Me personally, I ain't going that way. If I do not have the capital to do it myself, I'm not going to do it. This has to be our thing. And white folk have to understand. Now, if somebody want to give me $1 million scot-free, I'm not going to tell you another thing, and they put it in the contract. I'm still not going to trust them, but that's another way of looking at it. But I believe we have to do this for ourselves, period. This is what I believe, my brother. We must do this ourselves. Now, if somebody else want to do something, I don't argue with them. Because what am I going to say? Who am I to say it? But my thing is, I'm not into that. I am not into Europe. I am not against European people. You know, there's a story that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to tell. There's 1,000 wolves outside your door. 900 are out there to rip you apart. 100 of them would risk their life to protect you. The problem is you don't know where those 100 are. So my question is, are you ready to go outside? See, I know that there are European people. I know there are people of all cultures that have a Ma'atian heart. I know that. I just don't have time to look for them. It's like the great scholar.
Yeah. Too much sorting out.
Yeah, I just don't have time to look for you. You know, Edward Scobie, great scholar from Dominica, he used to say, don't tell me nothing about no good white people. Because good white people act as shield for the bad ones.
I didn't know Scobie was from Dominica.
Yeah, he's from Dominica. Oh. Yeah. He was mayor of a city there called Rosé. And he then went to UK and he lived there. Then he came here to New York. And he worked in City College of New York with Dr. Leonard Jeffries. And a lot of respect. I learned a lot from my brother, and I understood what he meant. Okay. The good ones, I know that. And plus, I tell Europeans that if you really want to help black people, you go in your neighborhood with them crazy people. We know what we got to do. You go in there and you talk to your family. You change your people while I educate mine. I know they exist. I have had a chance to meet good people of all different cultural backgrounds. But I didn't spend my time looking for them. And I'm not going to spend my time looking for them. I am black first. Period. And I look out for my people.
And you know, a fifth grade student said to me, we was on a black and white conversation. I was trying to explain to him that not all white people are as bad as he think they are. Just like not all black people are good. So I was giving him that logic. So he says to me, all right, Miss Moore, tell me, show one white person is good. And I said, I have to get back to you on that. But I'm telling you, just like there's good and bad black people, there's good and bad white people. He said, well, I haven't seen none yet. And it ties into what you just said. Like they might be there, but you got to go sort them out. So he was basically telling me, I haven't seen them yet. Tell me a good white person. The fifth grader's having this conversation with me.
Yes. And you know, even my sister, that if they are good people, you don't have to know them. Because they don't need to be all up underneath us.
Exactly.
They're in their neighborhood making the changes that are necessary. So I'm not interested in looking for them. I am not interested in naming them, because how do you name somebody? Just like I would not want to name a bad black person. Who am I to label someone good or bad? Who am I? Mina judge, let's judge I. We have got to get ourselves together, family. We're spending a lot of time in distractions. We're taking our eye off the prize, and we're distracted by these little things going on. And we got to stay focused. I am focused on educating our people, specifically our children. I have a webinar up on my website that has a teaching methodology. I have a webinar. I'm doing a webinar this Sunday on the canopic jars and the importance of them at the judgment scene. I do webinars twice a month. I do webinars every Tuesday. I just finished the season one. It's 48 that I've done so far. And that is how to teach our children, how to teach our people. That's what I'm dedicated to. I ain't looking for nobody.
Exactly.
I don't take my eye off the prize. So
we have a question from Shep. We have a question from Shepsu Heru. She says, in antiquity, all cultures ate meat. Why don't nowadays most spiritual individuals don't eat meat?
Well, that's hard to say, but in the beginning, I think in the ancient world, we ate because for subsistence. But when I first became a vegetarian, I became a vegetarian because we don't have enzymes to break down meat in our bodies. That was my reason number one. But the reason number one that I am now vegetarian is because it's a spiritual reason. I don't believe that we have the right to kill the Creator's creations to satiate our eating, because I know there's so many other great things that we could eat. Now, I grew up eating meat. I have been a vegetarian now, a strict vegetarian. I'm not a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, for approximately 37 years. No flesh, no pork on my fork. But I don't put nobody down if they eat meat. I don't put anybody down. I don't judge anybody. See, we have to move away from judging people. You know, I used to judge a city by how their spare ribs taste. I ate pig feet. I ate pickled pig feet. I ate hot pig feet. I ate cold pig feet. I ate chitlins, pork chops. I ate every type of flesh you could think of. But once I knew better, I did better. And I think
exactly.
My sister, and you know my sister Shepsu Heru, I think that something that becomes very important is the fact that all spiritual people don't necessarily not eat meat. You know, there are still spiritual people that eat meat. I don't eat meat for my own spiritual reasons, not religious, spiritual, which is energy, because I know that there's so much more I can eat, that it doesn't take me having to kill an animal. And why should an animal be killed to satiate my hunger when I can eat the green things. The reason why green things are so good is because they have oxygen. And I've been going to Dr. Sabi since 1988. And Dr. Sabi tells us that, when you're hungry, you're not hungry because you want to eat. You're hungry because your body's cells are craving oxygen. Your cells live on oxygen. And so when you're hungry, you notice sometimes you go out and you get a whole bunch of food, and yet an hour later you're hungry again. And that's because the food you ate did not bring oxygen to your body. So if you were to drink water a half hour, hour before you ate, that would be because oxygen, H2O, oxygen in water goes to your system. When you eat green things, lettuce, broccoli, I could collard greens, I could go to the list of green things. What happens is that green things give off oxygen. And so you are constantly eating green things. In the ancient societies, they didn't always have a great growing season, and they matured in terms of their growing. And so they had to substitute different things for the hunter in order to eat, so that they ate meat. So that I think that now that we know better, we should do better. But who am I to tell somebody what to do? If you want to eat if you want to eat ribs and chicken and fish, and hey, more power to you. Do your thing. But just understand what you're doing. So, me not judge, let's judge I. But that's what I see in terms of why the ancient world might have eaten meat, and why present day people don't. I would not think that you are not spiritual if you eat meat. Like if I saw somebody eating pork chop, I would not assume they're not spiritual. You very well could be spiritual. You can eat that pork to your heart's discontent, but that's a whole thing.
True. Oh, Baba, I was just taking some books to show you. This is the Wade Nobles.
Yes. Oh,
I don't know of memes. This is beautiful.
Yes, man.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite books. I don't know if you know Wabogo, Volindela Wabogo. This is one of his books, Cosmic Journey, Prophetic Destiny.
Okay.
This is a beautiful book. Actually, I read his first book and I had to get more from him. So I got this one, but the first I read was this.
Cold Wind from the North. Okay. Yeah, okay.
This is a beautiful book, Baba. Okay. Get your hands on it, because he analyzes the works by Cresswell Singh, Dr. Ben, Rogers. He goes through a whole list, and he talks about European civilization, how the story of Pandora, which was actually the blueprint for Eve, and so it's very beautiful. It's very deep. It's the prehistoric European origin of racism explained by Diop's two cradle theory.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's
I was going to ask you how do you feel about that. I was going to ask you how you felt about the two cradle theory, the northern and the southern hemispheres. Europeans being from the northern cradle, us being from the southern cradle.
Oh yeah. I mean,
but he mentioned when he mentioned it, it was like, okay, I needed to ask that.
Oh yeah, there's no question about that. When you deal with that, particularly with his book Civilization or Barbarism, it's very clear, and the science of it is there. I did a 4-part webinar, just finished it last week. I did a 4-part webinar on the origin and development of the Caucasoid.
Wow.
And when we understand that story, when we understand exactly how things happen, it changes the whole structure of who we are as a people. I analyzed the work of Francis Cress Welsing, Amos Wilson, Bobby E. Wright, Patricia Newton, to understand the two cradle theory. Africans being born, conceived, born, nurtured, sustained, civilized, and after they got their show together, then they took it on the road. And so when I look at the reality of Africans going into a ice age where the temperatures dipped upwards of between 200 and sometimes 300 degrees below zero, you can see why they would have depigmented themselves. Because the first thing that we do in the wintertime, see, Brother Usar, you don't have this problem. But in New York City, we got to put coats on. And we stay indoors.
I've never seen snow in my life.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, man. I have to run through it sometime.
Right.
But when you think about, and everybody, say again. And melanated.
I was saying, well, he needs to just go to the Bronx and he'll see some snow.
Oh yeah. And melanated people in cold weather, they lose their pigmentation. And their hair texture relaxes. When the summertime, now it don't become straight. It's just not as nappy or kinky as it is. When it gets around this time in July and August, even white folk hair get nappy. But they don't call it nappy. They call it frizzy.
Yeah, I need some too frizzy right now.
Yeah,
they want to gel it down.
And then they got a nerve to say they're having a bad hair day. But in that weather, you can only imagine what would happen to an African in that type of climate. The nose, and there are 3 laws. There's Glosier's law, Allen's law, and Bergman's law. Those are 3 laws. One law deals with pigmentation, Glosier's law. One law deals with arm length, limbs, and the other deals with body type. But these are scientific laws that when you're in the cold, your pigmentation is impacted, your limbs change in terms of length, and also your morphology or your body type changes. In the colder weather, of course, you grow more hair. In the warmer climate, your arms and your legs are long, your body type is slender, and your pigmentation is melanated. And so the two cradle theory, he calls it the zone of confluence, which would be the 51st parallel north going up. It cuts Europe in half, it cuts UK in half, it cuts Ireland in half, and it creates like a cap on the top of the earth. And those Africans that went into that area, they grew into the Eurasian, who we know as Eurasians today. The ones that were below that, closer to the equator, they became the pigmented Africans that we know today. Science. I don't talk about superiority and inferiority. It's not about superiority or inferiority. It's about dominant and recessive genes. That's what we got to talk about. Dominant and recessive genes. White supremacy is an oxymoron. There's nothing supreme about being white. In fact, everything about the European is recessive. And everything about black folk is dominant. Science. Google Punnett's cube. Punett. Punnett's cube. Don't believe me. Where you have the dominant and the recessive gene. Two dominant genes come together, you have a dominant entity. If you mix a dominant with a recessive, it's half dominant, half recessive. If you mix a recessive with a recessive, they become recessive. European, the original European, the Cro-Magnon, was a mutation of the original African. Because they only mated with each other, the people we're dealing with today are not mutations. They're mutations of mutations. They're beyond. And what they're doing now to themselves is further mutation. They are recessive. Nothing personal. That's what Dr. Francis Cress Welsing talks about. I'm not saying superior or inferior. I still believe, as I've always believed, that it's the content of your character that makes you who you are. But when it comes to dominant and recessive, black folk are dominant. The black woman can produce every human being that exists on the planet, but neither the European or the Asian woman can produce a black child. Science. We ain't personal, although it gets personal. It's the way science is.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Oh, here's a question from Shepsu Heru, kind of similar to what you just said about Chinese people. She said a Chinese scientist proved that the white fish came from the black fish, just as all races came from the Africans. Nobody has challenged his findings. And then she also said that, by the way, she doesn't eat meat. And then she also says, some people believe that when you die, you should follow the light, but others say to stay in the dark, while others say that you are the light. What do you think should be the right answer? So let's start with the first question. The Chinese scientists proved that the white fish came from the black fish and all races came from Africa. Nobody has challenged its findings.
That's just a statement of fact. Shepsu Heru just stated a fact. There's nothing I could add any better than what she expressed.
Right, it is what it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, in terms of the next one, you are the light. Edward Bruce Bynum wrote a book called Dark Light. And in that book, he talks about the fact that we are light. And when you're it's not a matter of walking towards the light, because when you die, you ain't got feet no more. It's right. About the possession.
You're gonna be floating.
Well, you are the light. You are the light of the world. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is. And whether you want to or not, you're going to do what you're supposed to do. And so, you know, you are the light. You are part of the light. The light is in the darkness. You know, they say that the fastest thing is the speed of light. That's not true. The fastest entity is the speed of darkness, because everywhere that light travels, darkness is there first.
It had to come out of the darkness, that triple darkness. Yes.
That's where it came from. Light comes out of darkness. In fact, light is crystallized darkness.
Because isn't there light at the end of the black hole?
Well, there's a white hole at the end.
When the black hole opens, there's a light. When the black hole opens, there's a bright light. That's blinding, they say.
Well, in the cosmos, there's black light. There's a black hole that leads to the white hole on the other end, and that you travel through this tunnel like that's called a wormhole. So that there is no white and black. Those are just measurements. Black is the absorption of all light, and white is the absence of all light.
Yes. Like the
So
extraction of it, right?
yeah, so I mean, in many ways, as we move through this process, we'll grow in knowledge and wisdom, but in time, in in time, in time. So I'd just like to encourage our community and our family. Check out my website, family, www.kabakamene.com. If you're outside of the United States, I would recommend that you have the chance to purchase my book through Amazon. But I would recommend that if you're in the United States, then you could get it from my website. But if you're outside, it would be much cheaper to get it through Amazon. And I've got 3. And so I just appreciate this opportunity to be with my family here and to share this time with you. And I look forward to the future.
Yes, Baba.
Yes, much appreciated.
I want to say Asante Sana, Duau, thank you, and praises, thanks for everything you've done, Baba, and all you continue to do. And all our destinies are entwined. And we await your coming to St. Lucia so you can share your vast knowledge, vast information with everyone here, those who are able to hear above the cacophony of the Western mind. So once again, thank you for coming on the platform. Thank you, Empress, for having him on. And I hope you can make it again. Hope you can make it here again. And I will be getting that book, definitely. I was watching it this week, actually. And I did put it on my list. And you mentioned the other one, the Integration Trap, the Generation Gap by Oba Tashaka. I will get that one, definitely.
Yes, no doubt. Phenomenal.
Thank you.
Wow, no doubt. Stay strong. Keep on keeping on. It ain't over till we win. And remember, solar power is the future wealth of the planet. Teach the children, family.
And Shepsu Heru said, thank you, sister, for asking my question. So she's also giving thanks that you were able to answer her questions.
No doubt.
I give 1,000 thanks.
And I thank
for
you
you being here. And I would like to see you again next month if you're available.
My sister,
how does your schedule look for September?
Let's work it out. We'll talk further once I can see how my schedule is going to look.
Okay. Just to keep that open, I had to put that out there just to keep it open.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you for being here. It's such an honor to have your energy and your time here. It's such a beautiful experience. Thank you so much. Much thanks.
I look forward to the future, my family.
Thank you, Baba.
Yes. Me too.
Hotep.
Oh, he said I'm a brother. Yes. Love and gratitude.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering, and I'm always very careful, Shepsu Heru, about names. And so
he just said I'm a brother.
I'm a brother. Okay. Hey, my brother Shepsu Heru, I understand. I'm always careful. I always refer to people as family. If there's a name I'm not sure, I always refer back. So to my brother Shepsu Heru, apologies for whatever, but you a brother, you my brother. I look forward to the future. Hotep family.
Hotep.
Yes, Hotep. Until next time.
See you next time.
Shemem Hotep.
Shemem Hotep.